The historical period known to us today as Classical Antiquity is most commonly thought to have begun in the 8th century BC and to have ended in the 5th century AD. I'll be focusing on the history of the area in and around the Mediterranean, primarily centering on Greek and Roman civilization. This video aims to provide you with a brief introduction to the most notable historical events from Classical Antiquity. With no further ado, here are the 10 most important events from Classical Antiquity in 10 minutes. Number 1. The Persian Wars. The two Persian Wars were fought between 499 and 449 BC and saw the Achaemenid Persian Empire, along with some Greek allies, attempt to invade mainland Greece. They were met with resistance from numerous Greek city-states, most notably Athens and Sparta. The Athenians successfully put an end to the first Persian invasion at the Battle of Marathon. Years later, during the second invasion, the Spartans, despite fighting valiantly along with their Thespian and Theban allies, were vanquished at Thermopyles, and the Persians were able to march into the mainland before putting Athens to the torch. The Athenians then struck a decisive blow against the Persian fleet at the Battle of Salamis, and finally the second invasion was repelled at the Battle of Plataea, where the Spartans and Athenians fought side by side. Number 2. The Peloponnesian War. In the aftermath of the Persian Wars, Greek civilization entered something of a golden age, and Athens would reach the zenith of its power. The Athenian-led Delian League, which had been founded during the Persian Wars as a sort of defensive marine alliance in the case of another Persian invasion, had turned into something of an Athenian empire, which spanned almost the entire Greek coastline. The Spartans, on the other hand, had consolidated their power in the Peloponnesian Peninsula. When Athens then began expanding into Sparta's sphere of influence, it would trigger a series of wars that would last from 431 to 404 BC. The Athenians, although seeming imperviable in the early phases of the war, began to falter, and shortly after the disastrous expedition to Sicily, Athens was defeated by Sparta and her allies, ushering in an era of Spartan hegemony. Number 3. The Macedonian Conquests. In the north of Greece, the Kingdom of Macedonia had seen a major upswing under King Philip II, who had risen to power in the year 359 BC. He had with remarkable speed turned Macedonia into a major power in Greece. In big part, this was due to his cunning diplomacy and military reforms, which saw Macedonia preside over a full-time professional army, as opposed to the citizen phalanxes that had been standard up until that point. Philip's troops were also equipped with sarissas, which were much longer than the standard spear. Many Greek states ended up allying to fight the rising northern power, but were defeated at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC. After this, Philip conquered all of Greece, excluding Laconia. In 336, Philip would be assassinated, and his son Alexandre III, better known as Alexander the Great, would take over, and proceed to conquer the entire Achaemenid Persian Empire, before dying of disease in Babylon in 323 BC. Alexander's conquests had ushered in a new period in Greek history, which would later be coined as the Hellenistic period, in which Greek culture would be spread far and wide. Number 4. The Punic Wars. The Punic Wars was a series of 3 wars fought between the rising power of Rome and the maritime Phoenician Empire of Carthage. The first Punic War was fought from 264 to 241 BC, and saw Rome, which prior to the war controlled only the Italian peninsula, win over Carthage and gain control of Corsica, Sardinia, and most of Sicily. The second Punic War, from 218 to 201 BC, would see the Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca lead an army, famously containing elephants, over the Alps into Italy, and crushing the Romans in a series of stunning victories. This caused many of Rome's allies to switch sides, and observing powers such as Syracuse and Macedonia would join the Carthaginian cause. However, Rome's armies, led by the generals Fabius and Scipio, managed not only to repel Carthage and her allies, but conquer all of Carthage's holdings in Iberia, and defeat them on African soil at the Battle of Zama. Finally, the Third Punic War, between 149 and 146 BC, saw Rome defeating Carthage and annexing its territory once and for all, and even going so far as to burn the city of Carthage to the ground. The Punic Wars would see the Roman Republic go from a regional power on the Italian peninsula to the dominant empire in the Mediterranean. Number 5. the Ides of March. Julius Caesar is the most famous Roman for a reason. He conquered parts of Iberia, but most famously, he conquered Gaul. These wars made Caesar incredibly rich, powerful, and popular with the Roman people, which posed a threat to the power of the Senate, which then wanted to prosecute Caesar for illegally invading Gaul. Caesar, however, instead of facing prosecution, decided to start a civil war and invade Italy instead. Caesar defeated his rivals in a series of battles that would take him from Greece to Egypt and all the way to Hispania. Those who surrendered to Caesar he treated with magnanimity. Having won the civil war, Caesar appointed himself as dictator for 10 years and later as dictator for life. This turned a great number of senators against him, and eventually a plot was hatched and led by 2 senators by the names of Marcus Brutus and Cassius Longinus. On the 15th of March 44 BC, Caesar would be stabbed to death on the Senate floor. The death of Caesar would end up setting in motion a series of civil wars that would eventually lead to the downfall of the Roman Republic. Number 6. The transformation from Republic to Principate. Following the death of Julius Caesar, his nephew and posthumously adopted son Octavian and his general Mark Antony would seek to avenge Caesar by bringing his assassins Brutus and Cassius to justice. The 2 groups would climactically face off at the Battle of Philippi, and the armies of Brutus and Cassius would be battered and beaten, and the 2 generals would end up committing suicide. With Caesar's murderers taken care of, Octavian and Antony were left to compete with each other. When it was revealed to the Senate that Antony, in his will, planned to leave the territories under his control to the children he had had with the Egyptian queen Cleopatra, Octavian had found his pretense for war, and he defeated Antony and Cleopatra at the sea battle of Actium in 31 BC, making himself the sole ruler of Rome. He then cleverly hid his autocratic power under the guise of republican institutions. He founded what historians refer to as the Principate, in which he referred to himself as Princeps, meaning the first under equals, and Augustus, meaning the venerable one. Octavian, or now Caesar Augustus, had become the first emperor of Rome. Number 7. The Pax Romana. The reign of Augustus ushered in what historians call the Pax Romana, which ended with the death of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius in 180 AD. In this period, the Roman Empire enjoyed 2 centuries of general peace, with no major conflicts, and enjoyed large economic growth. The provinces of the empire would become increasingly Romanized, and the empire would grow to its largest extent. The Pax Romana is generally considered to be the golden age of the Roman Empire. Number 8. The crisis of the 3rd century. In the year 235, the child emperor Severus Alexander, following a string of military defeats, was deposed and executed by the general Maximinus Thrax. This set in motion what is known as the crisis of the 3rd century, a 50-year-long period of civil wars in which 26 men would lay claim to the imperial throne, fracturing the empire. Add on top of this that many barbarians and the Sassanid Persian Empire decided to take advantage of the political instability by harassing Rome's borders. Order would be restored by the Emperor Aurelian, who reunified the fractured empire and strengthened its borders and ordered the construction of many city walls. And finally, Diocletian would usher in a new era of Roman history, the Dominate, when he reorganized the empire into the Tetrarchy, the rule of 4, in the year 293. The provinces would be divided among 2 senior and 2 junior emperors. Number 9. The Edict of Milan. Ever since the death of Jesus of Nazareth on a cross in Jerusalem by the hands of Pontius Pilate, Christianity had begun to spread across the Roman Empire. Throughout the first 3 centuries of Christianity's existence, Christians had been periodically persecuted, most famously by Emperor Nero after the Great Fire of Rome in 64, and by Diocletian in 303. The persecution had, however, not hindered the spread of Christendom, and eventually, in the early 4th century, the Roman Emperor Constantine, through a series of dreams and visions, would himself convert to the faith, becoming the first Christian Roman emperor. In 313, he issued the Edict of Milan, which granted tolerance towards Christianity. Following this, Christianity would grow even faster, until becoming the official state religion in 380. Number 10. The fall of the Western Roman Empire. The year 395 would mark the permanent split between the Eastern Roman and Western Roman Empire, when Theodosius the Great passed away and his sons Honorius and Arcadius inherited one half of the empire respectively. Due to various factors, including barbarian invasions, the central government of the Western Empire would grow gradually weaker and began losing territory to said barbarians. This exacerbated all the issues that had already been plaguing the Western Empire, and before long the government had fallen into chaos, with many generals once again attempting to usurp the imperial throne. Finally, in the year 476, a Roman general of barbarian background by the name of Odoacer deposed the last usurper by the name of Romulus Augustus, making himself the king of Italy and swearing his loyalty to the Eastern Roman Emperor Zeno. 476 is a conventional date that is used to mark the end of the Western Roman Empire. However, if you ask a historian, they'll likely have a different perspective on the matter and place the date somewhere else. While the West fell, it is important to note that the eastern half of the empire would survive this tumultuous period, and in fact go on to exist for another 1,000 years, before falling once and for all in 1453 when the Ottomans conquered Constantinople. And there we have it, the 10 most important events in classical antiquity. I hope you found this video helpful or entertaining or whatever. If you did, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and maybe subscribing for future content. Speaking of which, if you'd like to see me make a video on a specific topic, remember to write a comment. Once again, thanks for watching.